Are the French deliberately letting illegal immigrants come to Britain in the back of lorries? Take a little look at this. Yes, not one for the radio listeners, that to be fair, but a load of illegals climbed out of a lorry in Essex and...
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
Disappeared into the countryside. A passerby took the video, and the lorry driver and the lorry company were actually initially investigated on suspicion of human trafficking. But it turns out they actually had absolutely nothing to do with it. They did nothing wrong at all. In fact, they are the real victims in all of this, as you're about to find out. But we know that tens of thousands of illegal immigrants come across the channel every single year. But we have no idea how many come in lorries, because they just scarper when they arrive. But if you look at social media, the illegals are very much still giving the lorries a good go.
هجوم فجر فجر واحد خلى البلد وكبر جنب قلوبهم حجر خلى العباس يكبر زولي فجر لندن اخوك مر حندن.
Okay, I've said it before, I'll say it again, just deport them singularly for their taste in music. But anyway, it's worth noting that some of these people in lorries even have knives with them. So how, with all the security at the French border in Calais, are so many illegals getting through in lorries? Well, earlier today, I spoke to the owner of that transportation company whose lorry inadvertently had several illegal migrants in it. Now, listen very closely to what he said.
Well, the problem is that with tachograph laws now, we can't make the trip from Spain or Portugal back to UK in one hit. So on this occasion, the driver stopped in a place called Rouen, which is about 200 kilometres south of Calais. It's in an overnight, fairly secure truck stop, as secure as it can be. And we tend to sort of stay far away from Calais as possible, because if you dare stop in Calais, you're going to get someone in your truck. So we take the necessary precautions. On this occasion, what they've done, they've got on top of the roof, which is 4.2 metres high. They've cut a slit into the soft roof that we have on these trucks, and they've climbed inside. The truck then left the following morning, departed to Calais, did not stop until we got to Calais. First, he reported at border forces, French border forces. They checked the necessary checks, including the rear doors. We have these locking devices on the doors that you can't open by any means unless you've got the right tool. The ceiling cooled, that was still sealed. They put a dog around the truck. We then moved 400 yards forward into the UK border force control area, and they've done the same checks, which is unusual, but on this time they checked the truck on 2 occasions. The truck's then free to leave. He departed.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For decades, the political establishment in Westminster has betrayed British workers. British people have barely seen any real wage growth. Over 1 million young Brits are now out of work and education. The Tories and Labour made Britain one of the softest touch countries on earth for illegal workers. They created an ecosystem in which illegal migrants are funneled directly into our national economy, driving down wages and funding the despicable people smuggling gangs operating across the Channel. They effectively decriminalised illegal working in the United Kingdom. Now, this is a key reason why British people have barely seen any real wage growth. It's a key reason why over 1 million young Brits are now out of work and education. Existing civil fines are treated by bad actors as a minor cost of doing business. The system protects corporate elites and high street criminals while penalising law-abiding British workers and young people seeking their first job and honest businesses that play by the rules. Well, under a reform government, this betrayal ends. We will introduce the toughest penalties in the world for those who employ and profit from illegal migrants. We'll restore order to our high streets, protect the integrity of our border and return fairness to the British economy. We will stand up for British workers. Now, illegal working is embedded in the business models of multi-billion-pound multinational corporations operating in Britain. In our major cities, it's common knowledge that illegal migrants housed and fed in hotels and HMOs at immense expense to the British taxpayer are moonlighting for gig economy platforms. Recent enforcement operations revealed a staggering 40% of gig economy delivery riders checked in targeted sweeps were working illegally. Local police officers have privately reported enforcement operations yielding a 100% hit rate. So why does this happen? Because platforms allow individuals to rent out and trade accounts on social media with zero meaningful oversight. Corporations turn a blind eye while harvesting huge financial returns. That's why Reform UK will introduce the Deliveroo law. Under this legislation, company directors will be held personally and criminally liable for systemic illegal working within their businesses, regardless of whether they claim personal knowledge of individual breaches. We will mirror the senior managers and certification regime used by the Financial Conduct Authority, strict liability for those at the top. If a company accumulates material immigration breaches or fails to demonstrate compliant right-to-work checks, its executives will face up to 5 years in prison. And all platforms operating in Britain will be legally required to designate a UK accountable person. Overseas directors will not evade justice. Alongside prison sentences for directors, Reform UK will impose crippling financial consequences on the corporations themselves. Large companies that exploit illegal labour will face fines of 10% of their annual worldwide turnover. We will target the individuals who facilitate this trade by renting out their accounts to illegal workers too, those who lease their credentials to illegal migrants. They will face immediate revocation of their visas if they are non-citizens, large fines backed by asset seizure and jail sentences. To protect road safety and close regulatory backdoors, Reform will make it illegal to use any vehicle for commercial delivery without a full British driving licence. I know, in saying that this would be a new policy. Ending the widespread misuse of provisional learner licences. The decay of Britain is equally visible on our high streets. We all see it every day. Over the last 15 years under Tory and Labour governments, over 10,000 classic British pubs have closed their doors. Beloved retail institutions, department stores.
Britain's government is quietly losing control of the Channel, and Reform just handed them a grenade. Right, sit down, put the kettle on, because what's unfolding in the Channel right now is one of those stories that sounds like a headline from a satirical newspaper. Except it isn't. It's real, it's happening, and it says an enormous amount about the state of British politics in 2026. So, before we get into it, if you're new here, this is Britain Underneath, and this channel exists to pull back the curtain on the stories the mainstream outlets skim over. If that sounds like your kind of thing, hit subscribe now, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming in this one. Right, let's dive in. Here's the situation in a nutshell. Nigel Farage's Reform UK has just unveiled a plan that, on paper, sounds almost cinematic. Royal Navy patrol vessels, military crewed inflatable boats, border force officers standing by to make arrests. And, if the French say no, and they very much have, Reform says the Royal Marines will simply put migrants back on the very beach they left from that same morning. It's bold, it's theatrical, and within hours it had already triggered a diplomatic headache with one of Britain's closest neighbours. Let's rewind slightly, because context matters here. Small boat crossings across the Channel have become the defining political battleground of the past several years. chewing through prime ministers, home secretaries, and entire party reputations. And yet, oddly enough, the numbers this year are actually down substantially compared to last year, somewhere in the region of a 40% drop, according to Home Office figures.
Enforcement staff tackling the smuggling networks have more than doubled since the start of last year, so the picture isn't quite as apocalyptic as the headlines would have you believe. But try telling that to a British public that has watched this issue dominate the news cycle for the better part of a decade. Now, into that atmosphere steps Reform, with a plan that essentially says, enough talking, time for the Navy. Under the proposal, 10 patrol vessels would be deployed to intercept boats mid-channel. Migrants would be arrested at sea, and, this is the controversial bit, physically returned to French shores, whether Paris agrees to take them back or not. There's even a landing ship earmarked to act as a floating holding facility for hundreds of people at a time. It is, by any measure, an extraordinarily aggressive escalation of maritime policy.
And before we go further, seriously, if you're finding this useful, tap that subscribe button now. Britain Underneath only works because people like you keep showing up, and there is a lot more digging still to come in this video. So how did France respond? About as warmly as you'd expect. The French Interior Ministry didn't hold back, describing the plan as a direct violation of French sovereignty and a breach of international maritime law. That's about as blunt as diplomatic language gets. Reform's response? Equally unfiltered. A party spokesperson said Britain would always stand up for its own interests, whether Emmanuel Macron likes it or not, and insisted that what they're proposing amounts to a humanitarian mission,
Reform's Home
not a
Affairs
legal
spokesman
violation.
went even further at the press conference, essentially daring the French government to object, warning that if the Élysée Palace refuses cooperation, the Royal Marines would carry out the returns regardless. Farage, meanwhile, tried to strike a slightly more diplomatic tone alongside it, suggesting that French attitudes towards the idea were softening, though it's worth noting the French government's own statement, issued the same day, suggests otherwise entirely. Now, here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because this isn't just a political slanging match. There's a real legal question underneath it. Reform is leaning heavily on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which does impose a duty on states to rescue people in danger at sea. That much is true. But legal experts are far less convinced this stretches to justify what Reform is actually proposing. One maritime law specialist at the University of Southampton pointed out that the plan would fundamentally require French cooperation there's currently no reason whatsoever to expect. Another lawyer, speaking to BBC Verify, explained that while Britain does have certain rights to act within 24 nautical miles of its coastline, that doesn't extend to scooping up asylum seekers and physically depositing them back on foreign shores against that country's wishes. In plain English, the legal foundation Reform is standing on looks a lot shakier than the confidence with which they're presenting it. Unsurprisingly, the political reaction has been fierce and cutting across party lines in a way that's actually quite telling. A senior Labour minister dismissed the whole approach, arguing it would simply trigger endless diplomatic rows with France, instead of tackling the smuggling networks driving the crossings in the first place. Essentially, more shouting, less solving. Even the Conservatives, who you might expect to find some common ground with Reform here, weren't having it. Their shadow Home Secretary branded the policy uncredible, pointing out that Reform still has no actual answer for what happens if France simply refuses to cooperate, dismissing the whole thing, rather memorably, as looking like it was scribbled on the back of a cigarette packet. So you've got Reform positioning itself as the party willing to finally get tough, Labour arguing they're already quietly making progress without the theatrics, and the Conservatives sitting somewhere in the middle, insisting Reform's plan simply doesn't survive contact with reality. 3 very different stories about the same crisis, and all of them can't be right. And look, this is exactly why a channel like this one matters. Because the loudest headline isn't always the whole story, and the moment you actually dig into the legal detail, the diplomatic backdrop, and the numbers underneath the noise, the picture gets a lot more complicated than any single soundbite lets on. That's the whole point of Britain Underneath. We go past the shouting match and into the substance. So if that's the kind of analysis you're after, now's the moment to hit subscribe, because there's a lot more of this coming. What happens next is genuinely uncertain. Will Reform's plan survive serious scrutiny once, if they're ever in a position to try implementing it? Will the current government's quieter, enforcement-heavy approach keep chipping away at the numbers without needing a single Royal Marine anywhere near the channel? Or are we simply watching the opening moves of a political fight that's going to define the next general election, regardless of what the legal experts think? One thing is certain. This story is nowhere near finished, and it says a great deal about where British politics is heading. A politics increasingly comfortable proposing solutions that sound powerful on a stage, whether or not they'd survive 5 minutes of contact with international law. So take a breath, stay informed, and don't let this be the only piece of the puzzle you see. If you want to actually understand what's happening underneath the surface of British politics, not just the headlines, but the substance behind them, stick with Britain Underneath. Subscribe, because there is always more beneath the surface, and we'll be back very soon to dig into the next one. See you there.